Yuzuha is our first unit of Spook Check, and not only is she the second umbrella girl we got, she also comes with her adorable little raccoon, who is much more fierce than he looks like. Probably a good thing she didn't notice when I stole the porcelain from the shop.
Maybe you should have asked the Tanuki for some advice before. Guess I will have to help out here today. Today, we will be talking about me, my kit, my disk drives, my main and substats, weapons and teams. Oh, and I will also throw in some pros and cons, free of charge, sponsored by Mystic Wares. Just kidding. Somebody already paid for this. Oh, silly me. I forgot. I should introduce myself. I am Yukinami Yuzuha.
Hey, Yuzuba here with a guide on Riv's new favorite agent. Since Riv appears to be unable to continue, let me take over whilst he recovers. Yuzuha is a physical anomaly support who excels at providing various buffs to the team, whilst also inflicting anomaly from off-field, matching the element of your other unit. Or in other words, she is gonna replace Astra in every single anomaly team. In fact, she might not only replace Astra in every anomaly team, she might even be able to be a solid support for some non-anomaly teams, but more on that later. Let's first talk about her kit, and whilst it sounds rather complicated at first glance, it's actually pretty simple in practice. So let's talk about it. And it seems Riv has recovered from his injuries, so let's bring it back to him.
Well, that has been an experience to say the least. Thank you for covering me during my recovery, Gobar, and for some reason he didn't want to promote himself, so I will do that for him. Go and sub to Gobar if you haven't yet, he does some awesome HSR content over on his channel. Before we dive into her kit, I want to make sure we all understand how she plays out in practice, cause she is honestly really easy to play, but her kit doesn't really allow me to make it sound like that. So we switch her in to parry attacks, then use her EX special or ultimate and switch her out again. And everything else happens automatically off field, and in that sense she is actually quite a bit like Astra, you will not see her too often. And knowing that, let's actually dive into her kit. Yuzuha can apply a debuff called Sweet Scare that lasts for up to 40 seconds with the heavy hit from her ultimate and EX specials. The heavy hit here is the last instance of damage done by the respective attack, and whenever Yuzuha applies said Sweet Scare to enemies, she then grants various buffs to her teammates. Up to 1200 flat combat attack based on 40% of her initial attack and a 15% damage bonus. Yuzuha will need 3000 initial attack to max out this attack buff, and while reaching said 3000 initial attack is actually not a requirement, it also is rather easy to achieve, but more on that later. Her additional ability requires an anomaly character or an agent of the same faction. If that condition is fulfilled, she will grant up to 20% anomaly build-up rate and a 20% anomaly and disorder damage bonus to the entire team based on her total anomaly mastery. This buff maxes out at 200 anomaly mastery, and it is in fact impossible to hit this value unless you have her signature. But again, this is also not required, and as we will see later, she has many other good weapon options. Let's put her buffs in relation to Astra and Caesar, so that we can have a better overview on the difference between those. While Yuzuha's buffs are much more suited for anomaly agents, she still provides comparatively high buffs even without her additional ability. In fact, even without that additional ability, she provides more buffs to the team than Caesar does with her additional ability. But yeah, again, we will talk more about this later during the team sections. To summarize the first part here, Yuzuha can cast her EX special or ultimate to apply the Sweet Scare debuff onto enemies and will simultaneously grant buffs to the team. Yuzuha has also a unique resource called Sugar Points, and she can hold up to 6 of them, indicated right below her HP bar as per usual. Casting her ultimate or EX special will then restore 2 sugar points, while her chain attack or parries, either with a defensive assist or her held basic attack, will restore 1 sugar point. With that, there are 2 questions in your mind right now. First, what is her held basic attack? And second, what do we need said sugar points for? Those are great questions, so let's begin with her held basic attack. We can hold her basic attack button for up to 1.5 seconds, and if she is attacked during this time, she will then parry that attack, nullify any damage and gain 1 sugar point. Small note here, the wind-up animation is surprisingly long and you will need to anticipate the attack rather than use it reactively. She can follow up any parry, be it either a normal defensive assist or her held basic attack, directly with an alternative version of her assist follow-up. I will refer to this as her, well, alternative assist follow-up for the sake of simplicity. Whether or not you are using her alternative assist follow-up or her regular one will depend on your timing. After parrying, she will trigger a short yellow flash, and pressing her basic attack at this exact time will have her circle around the enemy. This is her alternative assist follow-up. If you press basic attack too early or too late, she will shoot straight at the enemy, which would be her regular assist follow-up. Since her alternative assist follow-up is much stronger than the regular one, we want to make sure to use this one. But it isn't only because of the damage and days why we want to use her alternative assist follow-up, and we will get to the why by answering what we need the sugar points for. While Yuzuha is inactive, if any other character in the team attacks, she will consume 1 sugar point and launch an aftershock attack called Hard Candy Shot. This aftershock attack can only happen once every 8 seconds, and when this attack or her second assist follow-up hits an enemy in the sweet scare state, that is the debuff we apply with her EX and ultimate, it will trigger an extra attack called Sugar Burst Sparkled Smacks. Furthermore, while an enemy is in the sweet scare state, they will take damage every second. Both this damage over time effect as well as the extra attack caused by her alternative assist follow-up or her aftershock will accumulate anomaly buildup, but are not taken into consideration within the damage formula. Their anomaly buildup is increased, and the anomaly they accumulate might actually not necessarily match her own element. Because when hitting an enemy with an attack of the same element as the controlled character for the very first time after applying the sweet scare state, both this damage over time effect as well as the extra attack caused by her alternative assist follow-up or her aftershock will accumulate anomaly buildup, but are not taken into consideration within the damage formula. Their anomaly buildup is also increased, and the anomaly they accumulate might not necessarily match her own element. When hitting an enemy with an attack of the same element as the controlled character for the very first time after applying the sweet scare state, both her damage over time effect and her extra attack will change the element to the corresponding last element used. This can only happen once per application of the sweet scare state, and we have to reapply the state using her EX special or ultimate if we want her attacks to be of a different element. This honestly sounds much more complicated than it actually is. To give an example, essentially this means if we were to use, for example, Miyabi's EX special after Yuzuha's EX special, Yuzuha's damage over time as well as the extra attack will now deal frost damage and also accumulate frost anomaly build up. And because this is actually a real element she takes on, that also means that running, for example, ice damage in slot 5 would increase the damage dealt by this attack. Honestly, that is not actually worth it, we will talk about that later, but yeah, just wanted to mention it. This is also just an example, and it is not restricted to Miyabi, of course. This works with every element and every agent in the game. To summarize her kit up until now, using her EX special or ultimate we can apply a debuff to the enemies, and when we do so, we will provide buffs to our team. We will also accumulate sugar points by using her skills, and Yuzuha will spend said sugar points to cast aftershocks attacks from off-field. When said aftershock attack or her alternative assist follow-up hits an enemy, we will trigger an extra attack which will accumulate anomaly according to the first element used after casting Yuzuha's EX special or ultimate. She will also passively accumulate anomaly every second, and both of these anomaly accumulations will not take part in the anomaly damage calculation. There's actually much more I want to talk about, and we will do so, but let's first finish her kit. Her chain attack, EX specials and ultimate will also trigger a quick assist. Her ultimate will restore 25 energy to the team as well, and while Yuzuha is off field, her Raccoon will stay and occasionally attack enemies. As a special side note on her ultimate, the animation is extremely long and does not really provide much damage, daze or even anomaly. Try to avoid using it during the stun window. As for her chain attack, because it triggers a quick assist, we want to make sure to use her chain last in order to make use of this. Generally, especially when playing with Yuzuha, doing full team chains rather than a double chain on the carry is most of the time preferable. Lastly, she has two versions of her EX special, with one of them being much faster, but also weaker. Both of them will deal damage and daze, but also trigger the quick assist at the end of the animation. Spoiler, because we want to run Astral Voice on her, and the time to trigger the quick assist of her normal EX special is just way too slow, we always prefer to use the weaker version because of this. However, in practice, I want to mention this as well, this is not necessarily always realistic. And with that, we have covered her kit. So let's quickly summarize how we actually play her, because she really is much easier than her kit suggests. We switch her into parry using either her defensive assist or her health basic attack, then use her alternative assist follow-up into her EX special or ultimate, and then switch into whichever character has the element we want to accumulate build-up for. This will most of the time the character be, which we quick assist into. If we want to switch her element, we use her EX special or ultimate again, then switch characters accordingly. To sustain her sugar points, we want to make sure to either parry an attack using her health basic or her defensive assist. And everything else happens automatically off field, so we don't really want to worry too much about it. Let's finish the kit overview with her skill priority. Since a lot of important factors, such as her increased build-up on her basic attacks, the sweet scare debuff duration on her EX special, and the energy gain to the team are just scattered throughout the entire kit, she is honestly not really a cheap investment. We want to focus on her core skill basics and EX special first and foremost, then her chain and assist, and lastly dodge. Frankly, we can probably leave her dodge at level 1 and we do not really have to invest absurd amounts into her assist follow-up either, but it does provide a good amount of daze and damage, so that is something to take into consideration. Let's talk about the anomaly damage formula for a bit. If you're already familiar with how this works, feel free to skip the next part. Let's first try to simplify and understand how anomaly damage is calculated. Generally, anomaly damage is calculated using all participating agent stats in proportion to their contributed anomaly build-up at the time of contribution. This means that our agent stats are snapshotted at the moment we contribute to anomaly, but enemy-sided stats are not. Let's break down the anomaly damage formula into player and enemy-sided stats. As an example, if we were to use a team of Bernice, Nicole and Lucy, with Bernice contributing 70% of the fire build-up and Lucy 30%, the formula will look something akin to this, with each of their stats snapshotted every time they contribute anomaly. The enemy-sided stats, however, are taken into consideration at the moment the anomaly is actually procced. This means, in our example, we want to make sure that Nicole's death threat is active the moment the anomaly is procced. Let's now replace Lucy with Yuzuha. Yuzuha is able to contribute fire anomaly without her stats being taken into consideration for the damage formula. Effectively, she behaves exactly like Bangboos. This means even though in our example, Yuzuha would contribute 30% of the burn build-up and Bernice 70%, the damage formula is only looking at Bernice stats. This effectively allows us to build our support like a support without losing much damage on the anomaly. On the other hand, that also means if our Bernice were to contribute 0% of the build-up and Yuzuha 100%, our burn would also deal 0 damage. This is practically not actually possible, but I at least want to mention it. As for the level modifier, it becomes averaged according to contribution as well, since the level modifier effectively simply doubles the anomaly damage you deal by going from level 1 to level 60. The more anomaly your agent contributes, the more important their level also becomes. So effectively, to really just summarize this, what Yuzuha does is she simply lowers the maximum anomaly required to trigger the respective anomaly rather than dilute the damage dealt between all participating agents. And lastly, to end the short interlude, if you have had a keen eye, you might have noticed that anomaly damage is actually a separate modifier from damage percent, and that means that the anomaly and disorder damage buff from Yuzuha's core are a separate multiplier from damage bonus and hence very good. And with that out of the way, let's finally talk about her combos. Frankly, as a support unit, she actively takes the field much less often than I would like her to, and that also means she is somewhat short on actual combos. But let's cover the bits she has anyway, as most of her combos rely more so on perfect timing rather than specific input sequences, as well as having some nuance on the usage depending on the team. After casting her quick assist, dodge counter, any of her assist follow-ups, or triggering a perfect dodge, she gains access to a quicker, albeit weaker version of her EX special, and contrary to her DOT and extra attack, her EX special anomaly build-up is in fact factored into the damage formula of the assault anomaly. That also means, while this is less important in non-physical teams, using the weaker version of her attacks is hence actually better. At least in physical teams. The anomaly build-up of her regular EX special is approximately 482, with her weaker version being at around 325. Or in simpler terms, the weaker version will give you more damage since it will dilute the assault damage less due to less anomaly contribution. On top of that, the triggered quick assist comes also out much faster, which means we always want to make sure to use her weaker EX special and do so right after using her assist follow-up optimally. But back to the actual combo. Essentially, you want to make sure to simply press your EX special rather quickly after the aforementioned actions. Here is the difference in animations for both the shortcut on the left and the regular version on the right. Again, we want to make sure to always use the shortcut version. Next, after pairing an attack either with the held basic or her defensive assist, we can then press her basic attack button to launch her alternative assist follow-up. If the enemy is under the sweet scare state when this attack hits, this will also trigger the extra attack. Now, this is interesting because the second version of her assist follow-up contributes much more physical anomaly, but it is also able to trigger the extra attack, which will contribute physical anomaly as well, but this one does not dilute the damage dealt by assault. So the question here becomes whether or not it is worth it to dilute the damage dealt by assault further in exchange for a faster assault. Generally speaking, there is no set and forget guideline of this is always better here, but as a rule of thumb, using her second assist follow-up should usually be the right play, as it will also lead to faster and more assaults, even if the overall damage dealt by these assaults is just slightly lower. And that simply means if you were expecting a plot twist here, I am sorry to disappoint you. Most of the time it is better to simply use the shortcut versions of her EX and assist follow-up, and we can do so by making sure to press basic attack right when the yellow flash appears after pairing. Here are both assist follow-ups right next to each other, you know you did it right if she spins around the enemy. That is also kinda everything about her combos. Again, she does not really have many. Instead, it is much more important on her to utilize her parries as well as the shortcuts EX versions of both her EX special and assist follow-up. I recommend taking yourself some time in VR training to get used to the timings because they are honestly pretty tight. Let's talk about her stat goals. Before we can talk about her weapons, disk drives and so on, let's clarify her stat goals. Even though her core skill caps out at 3000 initial attack, while we want to try to reach that goal, this is not a requirement, even if it is honestly pretty easy to reach. Secondly, her additional ability caps out at 200 Anomaly Mastery, and if you don't have her signature, you can literally not reach that cap. Which also means do not worry about it. Neither will I in this guide, because absolutely nothing changes for her in terms of her build, regardless on whether or not you have her signature. I recommend aiming for 3000 or more attack, 200 or more AP, and 171 or 201 Anomaly Mastery depending on her weapon. In the stat screen it will always show 171 Anomaly Mastery, even with her signature weapon. Speaking of which, Hello dear viewer who skipped right to the weapon section. Unfortunately for you, I placed the self-advertisement right here to catch you. Did you know I have a Patreon? If you like my videos and would like to support me, I post my calculation results early over on Patreon exclusively for my members, so you get something back for your support as well. You can find a link in the description. And with that said, let's actually talk about her weapons. If you intend on playing her in any Anomaly team, and you probably do because she is an Anomaly support, Yuzuha's best weapon is her signature, and that is mainly because it allows you to reach the full potential of her additional ability, as well as providing 60 Anomaly proficiency to the entire team. But Yuzuha also works as a generalist support in any non-Anomaly team, and running either Weeping Cradle, Kaboom, Elegant Vanity or even Unfettered Game Ball are all great choices, regardless on whether or not you are playing her in Anomaly teams. However, her signature becomes significantly worse and is in fact absolutely her worst choice if you plan on running her outside of Anomaly teams. As a small side note, on Kaboom, because her raccoon will be on field and assists in attacking every once in a while, she can actually achieve and maintain a full 4 stacks on Kaboom, which makes this the best generic choice she has. Let's quickly talk a bit more about Game Ball. Due to Yuzuha's unique ability to deal damage of the same element as other characters in the team, that essentially allows her to always weakness match every enemy in the game. And that in turn means she can have 100% guaranteed uptime on Unfettered Game Ball in basically every matchup possible. This also means if you have an Unfettered Game Ball at rank 5 and you are running her with either MRB or in any non-Anomaly team which actually likes crit rate, this is a great choice if you are lacking crit rate substats. But all of these have been her personal damage calculations so far, and her weapon choices look very different when put into a team context. Hence, here you go. As you can see, her signature becomes much better the more we lean into Anomaly and disorders. Pause the video now if you need to. Yuzuha's best 2-piece is a 2-piece Phaethons, and I personally do not think this set is negotiable, regardless of whether or not you are running her signature weapon. With her signature, you need to reach the 200 Anomaly Mastery, and without her signature, you still want it to gain as much bonus from her additional ability as you can. Unless you have her signature at rank 5, in which case you have enough Anomaly Mastery to run a different 2-piece. I would suggest either a 2-piece Freedom Blues for more damage or a 2-piece Hormone Punk for the ease of build. As for her 4-piece set, however, either a 4-piece Swing Jazz, Astral Voice or Freedom Blues are her best choices, with my personal preference being a 4-piece Astral Voice if you can keep a good uptime on the buff. With her EX Special, Ultimate and Chain Attack providing quick assists, that is really well doable, but also requires you to effectively make sure to always use her EX Special shortcut, as you will otherwise lose valuable time while waiting for her quick assist to trigger. And being able to use the Chain Attack Quick Assist to trigger 4-piece Astral Voice even during the stun window is honestly really nice. Otherwise, a 4-piece Swing Jazz is the easiest and safest choice, and with a 4-piece Freedom Blues being restricted to very specific niche scenarios in physical teams, I would not recommend a 4-piece Freedom Blues unless you know exactly what you are doing. If unsure, go with a 4-piece Swing Jazz, but I would highly recommend a 4-piece Astral choice as her best choice. As for her main stats, her best layouts will depend on her weapon choice, but regardless of her weapon, we always want to run Anomaly Mastery in slot 6. At least in Anomaly teams, that is. With her signature, Unfettered Game Ball or Kaboom, her best theoretical layout is Anomaly Proficiency in slot 4 and Attack % in slot 5. However, unless you have great substats, you will likely find yourself with not enough attack % substats, and hence I would recommend attack % in both slot 4 and 5. If you decide to go with Elegant Vanity, Anomaly Proficiency in slot 4, attack % in slot 5 and Anomaly Mastery in slot 6 are her best choices. She can also maintain a very easy 100% uptime on Weeping Cradle due to her damage over time and off-field attacks, but the missing energy regeneration will be a little bit noticeable and can hurt her uptime, at least at rank 1 that is. You will need to make up for this with more frequent parries, using her health basic to sustain her sugar points. However, Weeping Cradle has the highest damage potential, especially at higher refinements, not only for herself, but also for the team, and hence, if you intend on running Weeping Cradle, attack percent in slot 4 and pen ratio in slot 5 will be her best choices. But as per usual, substats matter a lot, and that means whether or not you are running attack percent in slot 4 or 5 doesn't really matter too much. I would recommend to focus on getting good substats first and foremost, so choose your layout depending on your substat rolls. The only real outlier here is Elegant Vanity anyways, which can allow you to actually not run any attack percent main stat, given your attack percent substats are sufficient. That said, let's now quickly talk about her layouts in Anomaly teams, which do not focus on physical anomaly. Due to Yuzuha's relatively high multipliers and the fact that a large part of her anomaly contribution is not actually taken into account for the anomaly damage calculation, building her with crit instead of anomaly proficiency is actually a possibility. Mind you, it is a possibility here means it is always worse than building her anomaly proficiency. However, it is also not that bad, as you will see in just a bit. Since her buffs and anomaly contribution are unaffected on whether or not you are building AP or crit rate, the choice of main stat in slot 4 and substats will mainly affect her personal damage. This is ignoring possible assault disorders, however. With 30 substats, we are looking at 12% less personal damage when using crit rate versus anomaly proficiency. However, when looking at this within a team context, this becomes much less. Taking Miyabi, Yanagi, Yuzuha as an example, we are looking at around 1 million less team damage using crit instead of AP. This is a team damage loss of about 2%. So essentially what I want to say here is, if you plan to play her in non-physical anomaly teams such as with Miyabi or Yanagi for example, don't worry about whether or not you have crit substats or anomaly proficiency substats. If you have godlike crit substats on your Astral Voice or Phaethon's Melody, you can use them just fine in non-physical teams. However, if you want to play her in physical teams, such as with Jane, Piper or Alice, going with AP is the much better choice. Generally speaking, however, with bosses being at around 80 to 100 million HP nowadays, a difference of 1 million damage in total is not gonna make or break your run either. If you want to play it safely, go with anomaly proficiency. That is also what I would recommend to you. But if you have godlike crit substats and your anomaly proficiency substats are dogshit, you might not actually lose out on too much damage by simply using crit rate and crit damage until you have better discs. And speaking of her substats already, we are looking for attack percent and flat attack first and foremost until you get at least close to 3000 initial attack, then anomaly proficiency, crit values and lastly flat pen. TLDR here being, build AP to safely use her in every anomaly team, but building her with crit rate substats is also not the end of the world, and at least in non-physical teams and also in non-anomaly teams that can be a valid choice. Let's talk about her Mindscapes before we cover her teams. Yuzuha's early Mindscapes are surprisingly good, and if you're looking to invest more into anomaly teams, they certainly are worth it. Her Mindscape 1 grants a flat out 10% all attribute rest shred to enemies affected by her Sweet Scare state and increases the anomaly and disorder damage bonus from her core passive by 30%. Lastly, she also starts combat with an additional 30 energy, which allows her to open combat with all buffs directly applied. This results in a simple but solid damage gain for herself and also for the team. Her Mindscape 2 grants an additional 15% damage bonus and anomaly build-up rate to the entire team, reduces the cooldown of her candy shots from 8 to 6 seconds, and will force trigger a chain prompt up to once every 20 seconds when using her EX special or ultimate against the non-stunned enemies. Her M2 also allows for some really funky plays where you can trigger a chain by stunning the enemy using her EX special, which will then prompt a chain. Except this is not the boss chain prompt, but her own. This essentially allows you to gain a full 2 chain attacks on your primary carry while still being able to get a chain on every other single team member. This is not only a pretty massive damage gain due to how stun recalculations work, but also in terms of decibel management. While the actual performance of this will depend on your team and how well they can make use of additional chain attacks, this can be a pretty good team damage increase. Her M3 and M5 exist, and her M4 makes crit Yuzuha better. Hell yeah, crit user propaganda time. But it also allows her assist follow-ups to trigger a quick assist, which makes Astral Voice by far her best 4-piece choice. Her Mindscape 6 is what the thumbnail is based upon, and not only is it very fun to play, it will also have your disorders hit like a truck. Although, I suppose at this level of investment, anything you do will hit like a truck. So, yeah. Her M6, after using her alternative assist follow-up, we can now charge for up to 0.8 seconds, consume up to 2 additional sugar points, and then fire up to 3 shell shots, which will inflict additional damage in Anomaly and daze each. More importantly, however, every shot will increase the disorder MV by 105% for 40 seconds. To put this into perspective, the default multiplier is 450% and we gain an additional 315 from this, which makes up for a total of 765 instead of 450. Anyway, I would recommend her signature over her M1 for Anomaly team specifically, but if you can guarantee it, her M2 is better than her signature. Kinda weird to phrase it like this, but I hope you get what I mean. Anyway, on to her teams. She has quite a few of them. When playing Yuzuha with Vivian, there is a decision you will have to make before combat even starts. And that is your team order. Do you want Yuzuha's quick assists for Vivian to generate additional feathers, or do you quick assist to your main carry to provide the Astral Voice buff to them? This is not only a decision in regards to Astral Voice, however, since the unit after the quick assist will also likely be the one which element Yuzuhas will convert into. If we quick assist into Vivian, Yuzuha will now always do ether damage. This needs to be a conscious decision and you will have to make it before combat even starts. From my experience playing various Vivian teams, I personally prefer to quick assist into the main carry, so for example Jane or Yanagi. This allows us to run both of them with attack percent in slot 6 instead of Anomaly Mastery, even though especially for Jane I still found Anomaly Mastery to be better, and in the case of Yanagi we can even run Thunder Metal. Generally, Yuzuha is absolutely huge for physical teams and definitely something you should lay your eyes upon if you are a fan of Jane. Or Piper for that matter as well, because the exact same can be said about her too. As for Yanagi, Yuzuha, Vivian, this team felt extraordinarily strong, and if you happen to have M6 Yuzuha, well, big funny numbers go boom. In my opinion, this is probably Yuzuha's best team as of right now. It is a very high potential team, and this is also partially due to Yuzuha's signature weapon providing 60 AP, which is just extremely good when playing with Vivian, simply due to her blooms. In regards to Miyabi Mono Eyes, personally, I don't think Yuzuha can effectively replace Sokaku. While this team still works and is an alternative for people like me who simply do not like Sokaku, Yuzuha's Ice Anomaly application is much less plannable and also simply less than what a full Anomaly Mastery Sokaku provides. As for Miyabi teams in general, in my opinion, Astra is still the better support here, and while Yuzuha is a great support option, she performed worse than Astra for me in Miyabi teams. Which would be a great segue to talk about how Yuzuha performs in comparison to Astra, but I want to stall a little bit and we will touch on that in the closing thoughts section. Instead, let's also talk about some off-meta teams, because Yuzuha can perform surprisingly well in these. Essentially, you can take any team in the game and slap Yuzuha into it, even in non-anomaly teams. She will still provide 1200 flat combat attack and 15% damage bonus to the team, as well as 25 energy with her ultimate. Since only her anomaly portion of her buffs is locked behind her additional ability and her skill MV are relatively high for support, we can ignore any anomaly mastery or AP on her, build her full crit, and she will do a very fine job even in non-anomaly teams. This is especially funny when looking at the Soldier 11 lighter Yuzuha team, where Yuzuha will now deal significant fire damage and hence can also make use of lighter's 75% damage bonus, 15% fire res threat, 30% crit damage from summit, and if you have his signature, also 30% fire crit damage. With Weeping Cradle, she can actually deal a massive 5.7 million damage over 180 seconds just by herself, which is a lot of personal damage for her support. For comparison, Astra does around 900 to 1.5 million, depends. This can make a well-built crit Yuzuha somewhat competitive in this team specifically, and I've had similar or even better scores using her over Astra. However, in my opinion, this off-meta team works best with Soldier 11, as Yuzuha allows it to sustain Inferno Metal on Soldier 11. While she can still do well in Ellen and Soldier Zero teams as well, either again due to Lighter's existence in Ellen teams or the aftershock crit damage share from Soldier Zero Ambi, Astra is still the superior choice here, at least in my opinion. One advantage Yuzuha has in comparison to Astra for Yuzuhan team specifically is that Yuzuha can sustain and trigger Yuzuhan's Auric Incorruption over and over again, and Yuzuhan does gain 10 energy when proccing Corruption. While Yuzuhan has an inherent 10-second cooldown on this, Yuzuha allows for a consistent proc rate and can hence sustain Yuzuhan's adrenaline needs better than Astra or Panyahu can. However, Yuzuha's 25 energy from her ultimate do not work for Yuzuhan, and whether or not Yuzuha can outperform those two, honestly in my opinion she can't, depends rather a lot on the matchup and how well you can make use of the additional up to 180 adrenaline. Generally, I believe both Astra and Panda to be better, but Yuzuha at least is a fun option. Lastly, she can also be nicely paired with Astra or Nicole for yet another wheelchair comp, which works very well and can carry any character in the game to a 20,000 clear in Deadly Assault. But also please keep in mind that a double 1200 flat combat attack buff has highly diminishing returns, and hence I would recommend Nicole over Astra. Generally speaking, the rule of thumb being she can work well in every team, but she shines the most in Anomaly teams, which should hopefully not be a surprise to anybody, given that she is an Anomaly support. Here are my clear scores for the various teams, pause if you need to. Let's end the video with her pros and cons before I leave you with the showcase and the closing thoughts. Yuzuha is a very easy to play and build support who is not only the premium and best in slot support for basically all Anomaly teams, but also highly flexible and can even be a solid support in effectively every team in the game, even if she is not on the same level as Astra in these teams. With Yuzuha, physical teams have gotten a massive boost in viability yet again, and that is partially also due to the new physical weak boss we now finally got. Yuzuha has many great weapon options, but the full potential of her additional ability passive is locked behind her signature, and she is relatively expensive to build in terms of skill levels. Her early Mindscapes are very good and depending on the team can even outperform her signature. Especially with her Mindscape 2, she has some great optimization potential for chain attacks, but well, this is locked behind her Mindscape 2. Lastly, she is a support after all, and if we have learned anything over the last 5 years of Hoyo gachas, it hopefully is that we don't want to skip supports. When comparing Astra and Yuzuha, I think there are 4 important takeaways. First of all, if you skipped Astra before and still don't have her, Yuzuha is probably the closest to a must-have pickup you can have that is not named Astra or Miyabi. Astra is much more generic and can perform extremely well in literally every team you put her in. Yuzuha on the other hand shines in Anomaly teams, but can also be used to a lesser degree in non-Anomaly teams. Yuzuha has a niche outside Anomaly teams, specifically with Soldier 11 and Lighter, where she can sustain burn and hence allows Inferno Metal to be a superior option over Woodpecker. But the gain is not that big anyway. She now can also build full crit in this team and contribute a large amount of damage for her support thanks to Lighter's buffs, which she can profit off due to her elemental conversion. Yuzuha is better than Lucy and Caesar in every way, and every team you would play these two in, you can just play Yuzuha instead and, well, just get a better score. Secondly, Yuzuha is the much more expensive support when compared to Astra. She has quite a few important scalings scattered throughout her kit, which means we want to max out nearly every skill except her dodge. Yuzuha also really likes her signature for Anomaly teams specifically, whereas Astra does not really care about her signature at all. Lastly, Yuzuha is not necessarily much better than Astra in all Anomaly teams. Yuzuha requires you to potentially change your builds to new sets or main stats to make the most out of her and is less plug and play brain AFK than Astra is. But her potential in Anomaly teams is much higher than Astra's. I will make a full video on how Yuzuha changes your builds, so feel free to check it out when it is released, a link you will find in the description after it is released. In my opinion, however, the most important takeaway is simply that not only can Yuzuha match or sometimes even outperform Astra in Anomaly teams, but she will replace Astra in these teams. And that also means Astra is now free for your other teams, which can massively improve your total scores or clear times over your entire account. Overall, I think Yuzuha is honestly a really good unit for Anomaly teams, and if you are an Anomaly player or you don't have Astra, she should definitely be on your radar. But is she better than Astra? Well, it depends, but she certainly can be, especially in Anomaly teams. And with these bell words, I will leave you with the showcase. Thank you so much for watching. A special thanks goes out to Gobar and Kitty J who voiced Yuzuha for me. You will find a link to both of them in the description. A massive thanks to my Patreon members for the continuous support, and I wish all of you a great day. Peace!
Yes, yes.